Hey, everybody, you're listening to and watching the Comic Book Bears podcast. I'm Bill Zanowitz,
I'm Steve Morey.
And I'm Caleb Alexander McKenzie.
and we are your hairy, heavy homos that talk about comic books, but you don't have to be a hairy, heavy homo to listen in, or possibly in this case, stream in. We're back with you for our first episode of 2023.
Hey, Happy New Year, guys.
So this
Happy
is
New
the
Year.
new year. Okay, there, there you go, Mr. Ben Gibbard. And we're going to be instituting some changes going forward with this show. Uh, if you followed us for a while, you know that we've been around for 11 years and we've had a rotating cast of characters here. I have been the anchor, I have to say. That's why I have the title of Grand Pooh Bear that I've put up there right now. And when we were, mostly me, listening back to some episodes last year, I realized how stale the show had become. And there's things where we had been previously known for, like, for being a fairly good interview show, and we've really gotten a little bit lazy in terms of our show prep and our show presentation. So from this episode onward, we're going to be instituting some changes. If you were listening to the audio, we actually had a different intro from what we've had for like the last 2 years, which was a song by Battles. What you heard was the original theme song for our show, which was You've Got It Bad by Ocean Color Scene. Starting next time, though, we have a new and our very own, for the first time, it's just ours, theme song by the electronic artist Walkathon, and that'll be ready for next week. Unfortunately, it wasn't ready for this week. So, Ryan, thank you very much for that. Look forward to having our very own theme song. That's very cool. And in the spirit of new beginnings and a new year, we figured we would do some reintroductions first. Hopefully, we do have some people that are watching this for the first time. I hope so. And even if it's on a delayed system, given that not everybody can get online at 9:30 p.m. EST on Thursdays, we realize you all have a lot of stuff going on. But these episodes are, for the video component, always stored on our YouTube channel. And in terms of the audio, we do have them through the various podcatching and our principal home over at Libsyn and Apple Podcasts. So if you're listening to the episode, I'm the one that's speaking right now. My name is Bill Zanowitz. I am the oldest of the three here. And if you are watching this, you can see that I have entered into the polar bear state of my life. So I'm technically old enough to be Caleb's dad, not so much Steve, but yeah.
You
the
can't
math,
serve,
the
you
math's
can't
there.
serve up that softball and not have me just call you daddy for the rest of the episode.
Go ahead. I'm at the
Blush.
I am getting so used to Daddy and especially Poppy in introductions that it's just I just have to cultivate my daddy boy reputation a little more.
We can practice this. We can.
Okay. So I've been reading comics since the fall of 1973 when I was 6 years old. You can do the math there from that point. And there have been various points where I've left comics and gotten back into them. Two major points, one in high school and then one after college. I am a graduate of the University of Delaware and Rutgers School of Law in Newark. I'm no longer in practice as an attorney, but having the Esquire after my name led me into my current career, which was in consulting for mostly financial institutions regarding anti-money laundering and anti-terrorist financing consulting. So that's me. And let's go over to Steve. And also, I should say I live in New Jersey, just outside of Princeton University in a town called Plainsboro. And that's a me in a nutshell. All right, so go over to Steve Cuddles Morey, and let's hear about you there.
Yeah. So my Cuddles is my Christian name, but I do go by Steve. No, I'm so I have been reading comics. I think Again, just like you, kind of off and on, since I was about 8 years old, 8 years old in 1988. So, yep, tail end of Gen X me. Um, and I, for I think all of high school, all of college, and for a good chunk of my early mid adulthood, I stopped reading comics, other than occasional graphic novels and like really serious fare, until 2011, and I got back into it with everybody's favorite reboot of a line, an entire line, DC's New 52. So I was the person that was enticed back into reading comics with that promotion, with that change. But of course, as soon as I opened that box, it just came flooding back. And my love of indie is, everybody knows, if you are a longtime listener, a longtime watcher, this I love indie comics. I love comics that are not from the big two, but I also do have my favorites with the big two that I'll just love forever. School wise, I went to McGill University up in Canada, and that's where I got my bachelor's. I did attempt a master's at UConn, and then just had the dumbest burnout ever in my last semester, and fled to North Carolina, where I live now with my husband in Winston-Salem. And I've been down here actually a good 16 years or so. 17 years, 18 years, 18 years almost.
Okay.
But yeah, that's me.
All right. And down to our newest recruit, Caleb. Tell us about yourself there.
Yes. So, like Bill said, I'm the newest recruit. At 35, I guess I'm the baby bear of the group. And for those of you who are watching this, and you're like, "Hey, like you don't look very bearish," I've lost about 60 pounds in the last year and a half. So, while I may not fit the mold of bear, I'm going for muscle cub. So, I'm trying to fit into the family where I can. Like Bill, I have a JD. I'm an attorney. I live in Arkansas with my husband. Been reading comics since again, one of baby bear of the group, but since early junior high for me, which was 2002. Took a break a little bit, like a lot of folks, but not too long. But jumped back in later, in my mid 20s, and haven't stopped since. Love the books, love the medium, and I'm all about it. In my non-comic reading time, and when I'm not a lawyer, I'm also very active in working in homelessness issues. So I help with a nonprofit here in Little Rock where I live. We are an advocate and a service provider. I'm also president of a 501c4 that works on landlord-tenant issues, specifically on the tenant side, trying to make better laws for them. So stay really busy. But I am so thankful I got to meet you guys. Thankful I get to be part of the show. Hope I bring something to this new year and to everything. So thank you for having me, and thank you all for watching and listening. And we hope you get a lot out of this.
Okay, so we've mentioned the varying degrees of bear in some capacity within our introduction, and I just wanted to read the definition of bear from first Wikipedia and then from Urban Dictionary.
Oh, yes.
Oh, God.
Okay, bear, comma, quotation, parentheses, gay culture. In gay culture, a bear is a larger and often hairier man who projects an image of rugged masculinity. The bear concept can function as an identity of affiliation, and there is an ongoing debate in bear communities about what constitutes a bear. Some bears place importance on presenting a clear masculine image and may disdain or shun men who exhibit effeminacy, while others consider acceptance and inclusivity of all behavioral types to be an important value of the community. And then over on the Urban Dictionary, the most common definition of bear is a man who is hairy, has facial hair, and a cuddly body. However, the word bear means many different things to different people, even within the bear movement. Many men do not have one or all of these characteristics to find themselves as bears, making the team a very loose one. Suffice it to say, bear is often defined as more of an attitude than anything else, a sense of comfort with our natural masculinity in bodies that is not slavish to the vogues of male attractiveness that is so common in gay circles and culture at large. Okay. So just some background on this show. This show actually started as a live journal page, if you can think back to that time. And the situation I was in is I never went to conventions when I was younger. I went to one when I was in high school, and the guy in the elevator freaked me out, and it was like early cosplay, and it just I wasn't connecting. And plus, it was like high school, so I was like too cool for school, that kind of thing.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
it's in one of the earlier episodes. It's actually pretty funny. But I started going to conventions, and if you go to any comic book convention, you'll see that there's a lot of guys that are. Let me put it this way: I said one time about going to a comic book convention, I'll be the middle-aged bearded guy there. Can't miss me. Okay. so, so, and that definition applies to, I would say like at least 33% of the people that go to a con at this
Yeah.
point. And my idea, because I never had a community of comic fans. I never was able to tap into one when I was growing up. Little tiny bit in college, but not too much. Um, and it wasn't until the internet happened that I had that sense, that I was actually, hey, I'm talking to people about like the Burn X-Men, or oh my God,
Hmm.
I never had this. When it came to music, I mean, as you can see behind here, that this is the CD collection, the vinyl collections over there. I mean, it's that's a huge part of my life, and I always had that. I always had people to talk about music to. Always was in bands. Always had plenty of friends to go to concerts with. But comics was always a very solitary thing. So when we moved into the time where internet message boards became a thing, and other social media, I started a page in the hopes that hey, some of us can link up. Some of us can do, and it was like, it was quiet. There's always like a big bang when something's new, and then it calms down a little bit. But then when podcasts started working, that's when I made the move to do this. So you'll see here, there's two of us that are bearded, one that isn't. That's not uncommon. Understand, bear at this point is kind of more like an attitude.
Yeah.
And when you think of some of the biggest people in the bear community, like I would say Sam Kite, um, you know, does not fit the description that you would see on, like I just read. I don't know what those two were. There's somebody's got to do some work there on those. Uh, um, but so the live journal page became a podcast. You're seeing three of the six. We have a fourth member who unfortunately can't be with us tonight for a very sad reason. Our brother Brian Pittard lost his father, so he's actually going down to Florida right now to attend the funeral, and naturally all our thoughts and good vibes go out to him. We also had Justin Allen, who started the show with me, and Matt Brossard, who, if you are familiar with the bear community, has some prominence in that arena as the artist Fuzzbelly. So, and some of them were a little more classically bears than the three people, but we're not going to stop. I mean, this is, it doesn't matter what size the audience is. We're a group of people that has formed a friendship out of this. And, very often the highlight of my fortnight is talking to you guys, because I love talking comics, and I love talking with cool people about comics. So
Yeah.
that's a little background regarding why we still call ourselves Comic Book Bears. So,
Absolutely. And again, a lot of people that we have as fans of the show, and people that we've met uh, on our trips to different conventions, and being around promoting the show, or just being comic book fans, fall into the comic book bear category. But then there's also plenty who do not,
Yeah.
and we love those fans as well. I mean, it's not an
absolutely.
exclusive club here. So we do love everybody, whether you consider yourself a bear or not. Um, you know, we very happy to share this community and share our love of comics and comic related things
Yeah.
with
Well,
y'all.
I think Bill hit the nail on the head though when he was reading the definition of bears, and when you're talking about the different mindsets and that. This is a very inclusive group of bears. Again, like I said, you guys let the non-hairy guy into the room to hang out, and there are several people who have been in bear culture who have not done that. So I, who don't let me hang out with that group, and that's fine. But this is a show for those of us who are comic book fans and podcast fans. A lot of queer people who love books have had to go into straight spaces and to make straight
Yeah.
friends and to do that. And the same with podcasting. There's a lot of podcasts ran by straight people. A lot of them are incredibly accepting and welcoming too. What I
Yeah.
love about this is a queer ran podcast by gay men that is equally as welcoming and accepting as straight men. We'll have straight guys pop up here in the chat all the time. We'll have ladies pop up in the chat. We'll have different versions of sexualities, trans folk, or whatever. And I think we're absolutely as accepting, or we at least strive to be as accepting as we can be and welcome as we can be. Because at the end of the day, we're talking about a medium that we love that is fit for everybody. Comics are for everyone. They should be for everyone. And so that's what I love about this group. It's what I gravitated to be your friend and later on to do this podcast. So I really do enjoy it. And it's given me a home. It's given me a place to be. So, I hope everyone else gets that same experience. And what I like about you guys in this podcast and the people that we hang out with the most is it's the best of both worlds. We get the most. You get as nerdy as you want to be. Like we can get into the ephemera. We can get into the history. Bill can tell you about what happened on panel 4 of Superman in 1983 of August. But we also just have we're all intelligible people, and you have interesting things to say not only about the books but also how you see it, how the world frames the lenses through which you understand comics, understand media. And I think that's missing. No, it's not unheard of, right? But it is missing in a lot of quote unquote geek spaces. So that's what I think, and I hope we offer that.
Yep.
Yeah.
So basically, we're just like any other comic book podcast. Just sometimes we talk about how hot Hercules is.
Yeah.
That's it. There you go.
Sure.
So as I said, we've become friends mostly through the. I would say, that this mechanism uh, was the instigation for us becoming friends. But there's still some things we don't know about each other. So we're going to ask questions of each of us and find out some answers. We're going to be doing a comic book related question and then a non comic book related question. So I'm going to start with Steve and my comic book question. And my comic book question for you, Steve, is: has there ever been a comic book about face for you? Was there either an artist or a writer or a series that you initially didn't like, and then at some point there was a reappreciation and it actually became a favorite of yours?
God, that is a really good question. I mean, sometimes it's the reverse.
Mhm.
I'll be following a book for a good period of time, and it just either something stops clicking, and I'm just like, that's it. I'm done with it. Take it off my subs. I don't want it anymore. But for the reverse, I mean, that's a little tough because a lot of times, if I don't, if I'm not really connecting with it in the first couple issues, I usually just stop reading.
Mhm.
Um, hmm.
Want to
That
table
is a
that one
great.
for a bit?
Yeah, well,
Okay.
yeah. Let's table that one because yeah,
Maybe by the end of the show you'll come up with something. So my
I can.
comic related question for Caleb is: Caleb, out of the comic book crossover events that you've read, what has been your favorite?
Oh God, that. Part of me wants to say that's hard, but it's not. And I guess the question would be, and this you can get nerdy with, is what do you consider a crossover? For me, it was 52. I consider 52 a crossover. I absolutely adored it. It's what sucked me into DC. I was not a DC person before I gravitated to it, but when I read 52. And it didn't have those iconic characters, right? Like it didn't have your pillars of the DC. You didn't have your Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman. It had all of these other characters, and it was written by folks that I wasn't familiar with, and then who are apparently just icons in the industry. Folks like Greg Rucka. I mean, and so realizing who they were and their prominence and the providence in the industry, and just what that series meant, not only for DC, but for what it's meant for comics. I mean, it's just had ripple effects, and I absolutely adored it. Out of the big two, I would say that's absolutely my favorite.
All right, cool. So now my non-comic related question, Steve, Do you believe in the afterlife?
Oh, I'll answer that, and I also do have an answer for your first question.
Okay.
My answer is yes, but I don't think it's the same kind of afterlife as popularly depicted, where there's angels and you're reunited with everybody you love and everything's great. I'm
That
more
basically
of
aligns
the,
with mine. Yeah.
yeah, I think it's more of a we are energy, we might flow
Yeah.
into new life.
If matter cannot be created or destroyed, I think consciousness works on the same level.
And same thing with energy. Even with entropy, that energy is transformed. So yeah. I could get into it like, like any college stoner, but which I was not, but um
That's also something for people that are first timers on the show. Steve is the good guy.
Yeah,
Steve's the good,
100%.
he's totally the good boy.
I'm a very
These
good
other two, we've had our moments, but
boy.
Steve's a very good boy.
Ask us anytime if you ever want to, just sort of private message us or something. DM, slide into our DMs and ask us about all our good and bad things we've done. But anyway, to answer your first question about an about face for a comic series, Hellboy. I could not stand Hellboy. I thought Mike Mignola's artwork at the time, when I was first picking up issues of Hellboy, was kind of too blocky for me. It was too simplistic, too blocky, too, just, this isn't really great. Didn't really connect with the characters until I read BPRD, Hell on Earth. The start of the end of everything. I immediately just fell for it. And I went back, and it was, I don't know what it was, but connecting with the BPRD team as it was written just made me want to go back and delve into their histories. And when you start doing that, of course, you're going to be bringing in Hellboy. You're going to be reading Hellboy comics. And I have the original, Hellboy library collections that you can't really get anymore, like those big hardcovers. I love them. I have every single issue of BPRD ever. Mostly physical copies that I've been collecting over the years. But yeah, that was it. And now anything Hellboy that comes out, it's in my stack. I'm reading it. I'm talking about it here. Yeah. So.
Okay, great. So my non-comic related question for Caleb, I don't think will be as heavy as the one I gave for Steve, and also comes out of having shared hotel rooms with Steve, but not with Caleb. So Caleb, boxers or briefs?
When I'm sleeping, or just like in my day to day.
Whenever.
Briefs.
Okay.
Yeah, it was nothing when I'm sleeping. I sleep in the buff. No, if I'm in a bed, I'm naked as hell, whether I'm with somebody or not. But daily life. I don't like boxers. I like to look. Maybe TMI. I don't know. I got a nice package, so I like to dress it up nice. So
show it off, lift and separate.
All right.
Really like boxer briefs. So in the middle with the little pouch. Yeah, well, not little.
I
but
just started getting some of them, and I'm surprised how comfortable I am with them. But I've been briefs since I don't even remember.
Boxer briefs for me. Not only is it comfortable for the package, but also no chub rub, so that makes me happy.
Yeah,
and that's important sometimes.
That is important. These are important things. Self-care is important.
All right, why don't we go on in level of seniority? So Steve, you go next.
I will. And actually, just wanted to pop up here. We've got panels with Pete here. Being stuck in the airport has kept me awake long enough that I can catch this live. Hey, fellas. Hey, Pete.
Hey, Pete.
How's it going, Pete? Pete's a great dude. Follow his Instagram page, by the way. If you don't, he posts amazing things. Super cool guy.
I have to. I haven't.
Is it at Panels with Pete?
Yes, I believe so. I'll double check as we are getting through this. But another member of the family, so to speak.
Nice,
awesome.
Nice.
Or Pete, you can actually post it right here as well if you'd like, and we'll bring it up. So Bill, question for you, comic book related question: what comic, and we're talking about single issue, would be your holy grail to own? Not just to hold, not just to have in your possession for a little bit of time, but if you own this would be the be all end all. You could die happy.
All-Star Comics #3, the first Justice Society.
Yep.
I know, believe me, if you like tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Here's this action number one," I'd be very, very happy.
Yeah.
And would probably retire within 7 months. But for All Star Comics number three, the notion of actually having the physical issue with and having that beautiful representation in front of me of the 8 first heroes in the team, that would be it. All Star Comics number three.
Good
From
question. Or good answer. Good
41, was
answer.
it 40 or 41, something like that? Yeah,
Yeah.
1940, 41.
That's
I didn't even
awesome.
have to think about that one. That's
You've got that ready.
yeah.
It's like it's in that list that you carry around to conventions. It's like right there at the top. So Caleb, my comic book question
Yeah.
for you. And you know how much I love movies and TV that is about
Yeah.
comics. But what comic series would you like to see on the big screen or small screen? Either way, just basically filmed for everyone to watch. What series?
Yeah. Yeah. So I would say small screen number one, because so I'm going to go with I'm going to go with comics, right? Like episodic. So I think comics come out monthly. They're at least in some short form, not graphic novels, which are the same thing. We're quibbling over things, but I'd go episodic. I would say, oh God, let me. It's a hard question, but I'm gonna go with Harrow County. Harrow County is probably one of my favorite series, top three easily of all time. It is Southern Gothic horror. It's witchy. It's awesome. Cullen Bunn's a killer writer. Tyler Crook's an amazing artist. So it is. It also features young women. It's very inclusive. So give me that awesome, spooky Carolina swamp witchiness that is Harrow County.
I think that would make a great series.
Oh,
That really would.
yeah.
I think they could do
Hire
it
me.
justice to it.
Pay me. I have ideas.
Awesome. Okay, well, so here's the non-comic question. So, Bill, what's again kind of going with the movie and TV theme? What is the absolute worst movie you've ever seen?
Oh God, because it's a comic book movie. It's tied in,
Oh, well, it
and that's
ties in, but it's valid.
Howard the Duck. Howard the Duck is the worst film point for point ever made. You'll never be able to convince me that there was any charm in that hour and 37 minutes, whatever the hell it is. I just think it's an abomination. And believe me, I'm not like I really didn't connect with the satire of Howard the Duck when it first came out, because I was like 7. I mean,
Mhm.
and rereading it, yeah, I appreciate it on an academic level, but it's not really my thing.
Yeah.
But that film doesn't even, it's not even in the same zip code of what the comic work was like. I cannot imagine a worse film than Howard the Duck. It's so bad. It's so bad.
You
Oh,
probably have an entire episode where we talk about it.
oh. If you
It's
want my
that bad.
non-comic answer, it's
Sure.
a Jaws ripoff called Up from the Depths. It's so bad it's funny.
Wow, I don't even know that one.
Yeah, like the monster looks different in every shot. Um, and the Jaws ripoffs from the late 70s, they're gold. They're
Oh yeah.
all wonderful in one way or another. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But it's really goddamn awful. It's awful. But Howard the Duck is for almost every point that needs to be made, that's the worst film for me from all time.
Awesome. I'll have to check out Up from the Depths though, because I thought I saw all of those really
Oh,
shitty Jaws
the
ripoffs.
best moment in Up from the Depths, they're gonna lure the monster, and I only call it monster because it looks different in every shot. Um, and there was a guy that died who was a research scientist, and they tie his body to the back of the boat to lure him in. And somebody, of course, says he would have wanted it this way. I mean, it's gold. It's a golden film. It's so bad, it's good. Yeah.
Oh, lovely. Oh, lovely. Caleb, your turn. This one, we know that your favorite football team is the Bucks. I mean, no, it's the Cowboys. Who's your number 2 and why?
That's a good question. So, that one's tough. Yeah, Tennessee Titans and proximity as to why. So I live in Arkansas. We don't have a professional football team. I grew up. I'm a '90s kid. That is a big reason I'm a fan of the Cowboys. Also because they're close, right? Tennessee Titans are an equal distance away. I can also, I mean, St. Louis is not that far away, but I would go with the Titans. Just that is the closest thing I have to a home team. So I enjoy when they win. So yeah, I'll go with Tennessee Titans. It's just the Cowboys, though. I don't have room for people who don't disappoint me. So
don't have room in your heart for that.
Yeah.
Hey, we are
I have
being
a very
joined.
easy off season now.
Yeah.
I have a very easy postseason now. I might even see a movie. Fuck it.
We're being joined by our fourth Brian Pittard. Ooh, is this like CBB Truth or Dare?
Don't worry, Brian. We'll have questions for you.
Oh yeah. When you're able to join us next time, we will have these questions for you too. So be prepared.
It's not really truth or dare. It's more of a getting to know you. This is like this is the easiest first date ever.
About
so
you.
All right, so I guess it's my turn. So I'll go first. I will start with. Actually, I'm going to start with Bill on this one. Let's talk comic art. I love comic art. You can't see it, but I am surrounded by comic art. Bill, what is your not really? I don't know, whichever one you say, favorite or preferred style. What is your preferred style of comic art? And if you want me to, need me to narrow what I mean by that or define it, I can.
Okay. When I was growing up, the pinnacle was Neil Adams.
Right.
As time went on and he was left to his own devices and inked and colored his own stuff, I think it affected his reputation. But there was a very valid argument on his part that if superheroes really exist, they would look like I drew them. And in the 70s, there were also some 70s, there were some Neil Adams style artists like Michael Nasser, and it's hard to think of this now, but when Bill Sienkiewicz started, he was very, very much in Neil Adams style. So that generally is my favorite. Do have to say, though, if I could own any piece of art, it would be the double page spread in DC's Who's Who that's by Kevin Maguire, which had the new and the old members of the Justice League with around 88. So it probably was the 88 update. And I love Kevin Maguire's facial expressions and styles. You all know my love of what Matt Wagner does, but it goes back to Neil Adams really, and just because that's it feels like home. Does that make sense? If it's comfort food.
Yeah. No, it absolutely does. All right, Steve. So comic book podcast like ours, we know that representation is important. So what was the first comic / graphic novel that you ever saw yourself in? Be that physicality, sexuality, identity.
That I ever saw myself in.
Howard the Duck.
Howard the Duck, which is also the best movie ever made. No, so that would actually have to be Sandman, but not for necessarily the reason you think. So my first issue, and I think I've talked about this before on the show, but I'll say it again. My first issue of Sandman was the introductory issue of World's End. And in it, you have, two coworkers who are driving through a snowstorm. They get into an accident and they find themselves in the World's End Inn where everybody's telling stories. And I identified with those characters in a way, not because I was an office worker at the time. I was in 9th grade. I was, I was in high school. That wasn't why. For me, it was because these were people who were being written as people celebrating hearing stories.
Yeah.
And that, that acknowledgement and understanding that as a comic book reader, we're being presented with these just amazing worlds of superheroes and fantasy and horror and everything sci-fi. And a lot of times we're not given that recognition by the writers and artists within the book. A lot of the back matter, or their own words, they love talking about the people who read their books, but we rarely see ourselves inside the book. And there, it was us. I saw myself sitting in the inn, listening to these just amazing stories. And also part of it was that at the time that I was reading it, I didn't really think I had any stories of my own to tell. And that's actually just like essentially the main character who kind of finds himself stumbling around there, you know, listening to all these tales being told and thinking to himself, I just don't have a story. And then realizing after he leaves that the story is that he heard all of these stories and that he can, bring these tales to the world. Yeah, no, that was the first time I kind of was grateful. Thank you, Neil, for kind of seeing myself as a reader inside the book.
That's awesome. That's
Nice.
fantastic.
Nice.
And a beautiful sentiment too. Thank you for sharing that. So I'll jump to our non-comic question. This one is for Bill. I'll start with you again. So Bill, you're a huge fan of documentaries, and one thing we always hear in the documentaries, you get David Attenborough's voice. This is the event that defined a generation. What's the event that defined your generation for you?
Oh boy, you know, up until the '90s, I would have said Live Aid, just because I'm so music centric, and this was the event where rock music did good, which
Yeah.
I think is an important move. Um, it's so funny because I think because I am Gen X at heart. Look, if I'm younger than a member of Nirvana, I'm Gen X. Shut up. Um, I think I go back to the defining moment because that also sounds somewhat crass to assign a music event to it.
No, it's. I don't
Um,
think it. I don't think it is. I mean,
yeah,
music is a very important thing to you. I mean,
yeah,
it's very important.
but I think I do go back to the '90s then with the emergence of grunge, and then later on, Britain had um, their equivalent in Britpop, and I was huge into both of those movements. Um, I'd have to think about it because I don't
Yeah.
really, because I know there are people that have like the JFK assassination.
Yeah.
I mean, that's very much there before and after, and I don't necessarily think, um, I mean, some of like the Beatles on Ed Sullivan, I think is, absolutely has validity as a defining moment for someone else. But you know, AIDS
Yeah.
was, something that rocked everybody's world. You know, I
Mm.
was, I was, you know, I was 17, 18 in 1985. So just imagine when you're a confused
Adolescent.
fella about your sexuality and you have that going on.
Yep.
Um, and that certainly delayed um, some of the progress. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Uh, it could be the advent of AIDS because when you think of laws and medicine and art was so affected by the onset of that particular plague. I would probably say AIDS.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's that. I don't know that anybody could argue with that. I mean, that is that globally defining moment or globally defining window of time. So that's yeah. Steve, you have lived in the States. You have lived in Canada. You lived in East Coast. You've lived in snowy mountains. Um, if you could live in any city globally, what city would that be, and what defining feature is it that draws you there? even if it's a city that you haven't been to yet. So when I think about this, there are a city that I think of, and I've never been there, I've never visited, but there's an aspect of it I fantasize about.
Mm-hmm.
Interestingly, it's going to be a city that I've already lived in. Um, and it's a city that also features something that I absolutely hate more than anything else. Um, and it's Montreal, actually. It was the first city, like true city that I lived in and felt like I lived in, even though I was a temporary resident. I was only
Mm-hmm.
there for 4
Hmm.
years. Just there was always that sort of like, okay, I've got my end point. It's going to happen. I'm going to have to like go back home more or less. Um, but I will say that of all the places that I have lived, and I've also lived in Germany, in multiple states, it's East Coast and in the South now. Um, I'd say that that city had more to offer in just a few square miles than most places that I've lived. You know, driving for hours and hours and hours trying to get to things. It had everything. It had culture. It had a very like polyglot kind of um, you know uh, citizenry. There was a lot of history, but there was also a lot of pushing towards the new and the progressive. It was very open about sexuality. It was where I came out,
Yeah.
and where I was able to hold hands with my boyfriend in the middle of a city and not feel self conscious about it or concerned or worried. It had public transportation, and I love subways and trains. Um, and I also got to experience just a lot of really wonderful things there. So I would love to go back someday, even though it has fucking snow, and I
Yeah.
hate snow and I hate the cold, but I would put up with it again if I got to live there. So again, that's me.
Awesome. Well, those are my questions. And hey, Steve, while you were talking, we had an individual pop into the chat. His name is Cecil Young. He's an older gentleman. He's watching his first episodes of the Bears, which is awesome. He's a lifelong comics fan. So we want to welcome
Hey,
Cecil.
Cecil.
He
Yeah.
also puts in there that he lost his partner last year. So you have our condolences. So but thank you for joining us, and we hope this brings some light and some levity to your world.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us, Cecil or Cecil, and definitely we're glad to have you watching, and hopefully we'll see your face again on our next episode. Um, Always welcome to join in to the comments, and listen to our back catalog. We've got a lot of stuff in there,
Yep.
and also our condolences as well.
Yep. I can't better what these two gentlemen have said, so I won't. so, um, so we're gonna move on to news. Now, normally when we have a news segment, there's usually a lot of news. There isn't too much this week. We had an abundance of it last time between Aftershock's bankruptcy proceedings and the James Gunn stuff with the DC Studios changes. So there is something though I do want to bring up, and in an ideal world, you'd be hearing like an '80s style like news flash, like did 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 did. We couldn't work it out. It might be in the audio, but hey, it's a work in progress here.
Yes.
So Steve, why don't you put something up? And this is from a very well-known comics creator who is not very active with the big two these days,
Mhm.
for what should be very apparent reasons. And let's put
Yeah.
that up.
So just recently here, and I think it's just a few days ago, actually, this really popped up.
Mhm.
Chuck Dixon, he supports the current thing according to his little thing, his little icon there. But a stark contrast in quality. He posted a picture of comic creators in 1994. Basically a lot of white dudes who we all love. We love
Yeah.
them.
I
A
mean,
lot of
you
these
have
creators.
Kurt Busiek, you have
Yep.
Dan Jurgens, you have a bunch of people that we know. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's a list of people that we knew back in 1994, and some of whom we still read today. and also a selection of comic books. Batman, the 0 month crossover for, or the 0 hour crossover, I should say, for DC that year, and also Superman. And then, of course, he contrasts that with the comic creators of today, and it's a pretty diverse group of people. And of course, he shows collection, excerpts of um, Robin, Tim Drake with his boyfriend, Jonathan Kent with his boyfriend. Um, I believe that panel down at the bottom is one of the joke satirical Otherworld stories about the pregnant Joker. And
Yeah.
I couldn't really see the other panel that he had kind of
Yeah, it's hard to make out.
smushed on there. Um, but generally, his implication here is that the comic creators in '94 were putting out some great, amazing stuff. And then now, because of course, diversity hires and you got to give everybody, representation, we're getting crap. And it's funny looking at this. If I were looking at this and I didn't realize his intention, if I were not looking at his intention, I would say, wow, look at these creators. There's a lot more diversity now, and we're getting some really cool stories that I love to read because I've been reading a lot of these stories. I've been loving them. Loving Superman Son of Kal-El, and I'm a big fan of Tim Drake, and I think this is a really cool, evolution of his character. So obviously he did this for his preferred audience, who presumably would have agreed with him. However, there were some wonderful comments, and I think we put up a couple here. Let's start with Ty Templeton's response. I think you mean content, says Ty Templeton, because the quality of the art you're using as examples looks pretty good to me from both eras. We still have Mark Waid and Dan Slott and John Romita Jr. and Dan Jurgens and me and dozens of creators from the 90s. Still working and still making good, fun comics. How does it hurt to invite diverse voices to join the fun? And don't be reductive. We don't have a monolithic and exclusively LGBTQ freelancer pool. That's just silly. So, he kind of calls them out on the very basics where it's like, hey, we still have all these people, but now we have even more people. And they're putting out great stuff. But that was a pretty fun one. We also had a response here from Scott Peterson. As someone in that 1994 photo and who remains incredibly proud of the very small part I played in the creation of some great comics, I feel I need to chime in and say I'm not at all in agreement with this meme. Yeah, I mean the unfortunate derogatory implication of it just kind of, unfortunately, is not very genuine, because there's some great stuff, and even the creators that are showing up that are being used as examples of like, this is when we were good, now we're crap, are like, no, it's great now too. One of my favorites though, and Bill, thank you for finding a lot of these, Jamal Igle. I love Jamal.
Past guest and friend of the show.
Oh yeah, past guest, friend of the show. We love Jamal. Always a fucking disappointment he is. I loved his work as a kid. And the response, obviously a lot of people, respond positive to that.
I want to focus a little more on the Mitch Fitzpatrick
Yes.
Smith response, where he says his work on Nightwing helped me through PTSD. I honestly don't think I'd be here without it. Breaks my heart to see this. And that's something that I'm struggling with. Now, a lot of the writers that have gone the ultra conservative route, most of them are hacks. James Hudnall, Mike Barron, who cares? Chuck Dixon, though, did have a body of work that I think by any metric is admirable. I loved his run on Airboy. He basically enhanced Dick Grayson, though he didn't create Nightwing or create Tim Drake. A lot of the personality and vibrancy of those characters were due to the work that he put in when he was on those titles in the 90s. Co-creator of Birds of Prey, which has proven to be a very valuable a valuable asset to DC Comics. And when I see something like this, and I understand some of it surprises me because um, Dixon's conservatism, has never been a secret, but there were times in his work where there were LGBT characters. I mean, he was the writer of Grifter Midnighter, and they addressed the sexuality. It was just part of his life. He didn't shy away from that stuff. And I go back. I just want to read this. This is from um, Mags Visaggio, who is a trans comics creator. If you're not familiar with their work, and this was when the J.K. Rowling turf
Yeah.
controversy really reared its head, and they were saying that for them it's Orson Scott Card.
Hmm.
Ender's Game and the work of OSC generally meant so much to me. I still keep a collection of his short fiction on my shelf, but it's hard to engage with his work, which played such a huge role in my growth. Now that I know what sort of man he is. For those of you hurting from Rowling's heel turn, I offer a piece of advice. You are an intelligent reader, and the good you found in Harry Potter is still there. Nothing has changed except the presumption of purity. You'll now have to engage her work critically now, but that is always true of every book by every person ever written. All our idols have feet of clay, every single one of them. Orson Scott Card taught me radical empathy. That is still a valuable lesson, even if one Card himself seems incapable of embodying. And there's a
Hmm.
lot of comparisons right now in music with where Morrissey has gone
Yeah.
and where Van Morrison and Eric Clapton have gone in regards to vaccines.
System of a Down.
Mhm.
Look, that drummer Mensa was never going to be recruiting him. I'm sorry, but I can't imagine being in that band. You know, I mean, they're and Serge are brother-in-laws too, so that's some weird shit. But y- that's a piece I always take away, that what I found in this work, even though the the creator has some stains upon them.
Mhm.
And for Dixon, to me, it's irredeemable. Working with Vox Day, that's a line that you crossed once, and there's no going back from that.
Hmm.
That is a straight out white supremacist,
Yeah.
straight out like horrible misogynist, even outside of that stuff. So the good you saw in his work is still there. That's what I want to say to anybody that is kind of struggling with them. It's a shame that they took this route. And like I said, there are certain creators that are aligned with the more um, right side of politics that I don't think are of the caliber of Chuck Dixon. And so it's a shame. It's a shame,
Well,
but that's what I take away from it.
so I'll chime in here, and I think you guys are a little bit nicer than I am. And you mentioned the caliber of Chuck Dixon. I would disagree. I would say the caliber that Chuck Dixon was. Chuck Dixon's current, I guess, ideas and stuff, his politics or his opinions even are as stale and unwanted as his current product.
Mhm.
His, I'm an equal opportunist person. I'll look at something, I'll check it out. I haven't touched the Vox Day stuff because no, ooh, gross. But I've looked at some of Chuck Dixon's modern givings to the comic world, some of the stuff that he did with some Comicscape crap, um, and it's crap. It's bad. His political opinions
Oh,
are not why he's
it
not.
has to affect your
Yeah,
quality. It has
it's
to.
yeah, it's not.
Absolutely.
That's not why he's not working in modern comics. He's doing it because his artistic talent is shit now. He doesn't have it anymore. He lost what he had. He's just not a good artist anymore, or not a good writer. Like he's just not a good creator anymore. Facts. That's just the way it is. Sorry if that hurts his feelings. I don't give a shit. But it's just not good. That's why you're not getting work, and you're using that your political machinations as a crutch for that.
Mhm.
This is not a chicken and the egg thing. We know which came first, right? You lost the talent, you lost whatever magic you had, and so now you're finding an excuse for why you don't have notoriety and why you don't have a place in the modern pantheon of comics. And it's intellectually dishonest. Not only is that intellectually dishonest, that fucking meme that he posted is intellectually dishonest. I don't know. So that bottom picture, somebody can inform me. I'm ignorant. I don't know who any of those people are, but
That's Marvel Productions office in 2018.
okay, yeah. So
Those are
there
the
are plenty.
those are
There
women
are
and trans people that are part of Marvel's production office when the milkshake gate. Uh,
okay. Yeah.
thing happened.
So
That's
to
what he
that
was
end,
saying.
though, those are again, I don't recognize them. I think they're probably some behind the scene people, some editors and stuff like that.
Yeah.
There are plenty of out queer creators that are writers and artists that have teamed up, taken pictures together that he could have posted. So he couldn't even have been bothered to have put the pictures of the people that are in the frames that he posted, if
Yeah.
I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So like,
And then also for another dig, if you're going to look at examples of work that stunned the world in '94, you're really going to go to Zero Hour.
yeah, I mean,
And I speak of that as a massive DC fan.
but
Come on,
to borrow Templeton's
do
thing, if
better.
your argument is that the industry is flooded and founded with these hyper queer people, that you have this monolithic LGBTQ freelancer thing. Number one, those aren't freelancers. Now that we know that, they're actually just they're industry people. And you couldn't even find a picture of the freelancers that are out. You couldn't find Max Saggio. You couldn't find Jamal Igle. You couldn't find any goddamn body. That's what it's weak sauce, dude, bro.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
um,
And Steve, can you just show the other response that I think was golden?
This one's kind of my favorite. I'm sorry, Chuck who? From Mark Wade. Yeah. I mean, at this point, and to go along with what Caleb said, he did have work at one point that was meaningful to a lot of people. That at least, if not completely hid sort of his political or social ideas, were able to present them in a way that wasn't offensive to people, and actually was meaningful and was fun to read and was great. Made some great comics. But yeah, now, no, I mean, some people just need to retire and just go away.
I hate even giving them credence. Like, I just,
Yeah. But it remains an element of fandom that we have to address at points. So that's why I brought it up. And plus, there was no other fucking news.
So I actually didn't see this till shifting gears. I didn't see this till right before the show, or I would have sent something. But there's a little bit. I found out, very sad to find out, that Birdcage Bottom Books is going the way they're going up. So if you're not familiar with them, they put out some great work. But yeah, they're going out of business. They put out some really cool comics. They're a small press publisher. So RIP to Birdcage Bottom.
Okay.
That's too bad.
Yeah. Go ahead, Steve. It looks like you were about to say something and I interrupted you.
Oh, well, I was just going to say we've had some additional comments here from both Cecil and Panels with Pete. Cecil had mentioned something about the creator of Build a Horse was an early trans woman, which I'm not too familiar with Build a Horse, but that is a good point. I mean, it's not like queer presenting people are brand new to comics.
Or trans representing people. When you look at Rachel Pollack or Jeffrey Jones,
my gosh,
later Catherine Jones,
Wonder Woman was created by a polyamorous BDSM throuple.
Yes, there you go. I mean, it's alternate sexualities, but also people who would today be part of the queer community have always been, there in comics and present and very, very influential. And Panels with Pete actually mentioned, I've never read any Dixon's work, but this is pretty damn gross. I'll pass. Yeah. I mean,
just pass.
He could be
now.
Especially at this point now. I mean, why do people need to go back and read his stuff if they haven't read his stuff before? I mean, it's just kind of killing any kind of.
Well, I think it's unavoidable if you read bigger arcs that are incorporated into Legend, like Nightfall.
True.
I mean, it's just there. His work is going to be there.
So
I just that's something that I'm going through right now with Morrissey. I always saw him on tour every day, and some of the racial insensitivity isn't new. Some of it isn't new, but he took a step too far with the last British election, I think. And though I'm not British, I'm a human being, and I need to be loved.
So I struggle.
And, the stuff that what I came away with from the Smiths, the emptiness I didn't know was there, that group addressed lyrically. I value that to this day, but it's one of those things where there is a cutoff point, unless there is some sort of some sort of come to Jesus moment.
I
And
was just a fan of Charmed, but to that end, I have a very similar experience with Marilyn Manson. I love Manson. I have
oh,
Oh, those
Caleb,
storms are affecting the
yeah,
sound.
Caleb, maybe leave and come back in because we just lost you, and then you come back in and tell us about Marilyn Manson. Let's see what happens. Oh,
Oh, do we lose
yeah,
him? Lose him?
that's a super freeze.
As a super freeze.
Yeah, maybe he'll
Ah,
leave and come back. Yeah,
yeah. Thankfully, for those of you who are
there
watching,
was
oh, now you're
movement.
back.
There's
You're
movement.
moving.
There we go. What?
You're moving.
I'm back. Sorry, guys.
Okay.
Yay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm back. So yeah, I struggle with Marilyn Manson. I'm a huge Manson fan. I have that same problem. I have all his albums, but he's a garbage person. He did
Yeah.
terrible things, unforgivable things. But I don't think you can talk about music in the '90s and the early 2000s, at least in rock and roll pop culture, without bringing up Marilyn Manson. Just like you couldn't with Alan Cooper, or at some point you got to talk about Gigi Allen. So
Mhm.
these shock rock
My friend
folks.
Rob, my friend Rob Usden is going through something right now with Bill Cosby. He was
Yeah,
a massive Bill Cosby fan, massive.
Mhm.
And what do you do, from
yeah.
this point on, you know?
Oh.
Uh,
Oh well.
but
It
I'm with
happens.
I'm with Mags.
Yep.
The
Yeah.
good I took out of that is still there. It remains, and just meant I had good taste, even if the person who created that part in part is tasteless.
That part.
Yeah. All right, I guess we should move on to some comic books. I knew we were going to be a little bit extended on this episode because,
Yeah.
first of all, we haven't been with each other for a few weeks, and I just love those questions, man. That was really cool.
That was fun.
That was
That was
really
fun.
cool. Yeah, it can't be a normal feature, but I was glad we did that. So
Yes.
let's start talking about some funny books, and we're going to start with the House of Ideas. And Steve, why don't you tell us about New Mutants?
So New Mutants number 33 is what I'm going to be talking about pretty quickly. But this is actually the final issue of this volume of New Mutants. So this is the 2019 volume of New Mutants. I think it's maybe volume 4, maybe volume 3, volume 4, since the New Mutants title started. But this started in 2019 with the Dawn of X, and this basically has been a great book. I've followed it. There's been a lot of really interesting development with a lot of the younger X-Men and New Mutants, what you consider to be New Mutants, with the Shadow King, and just a lot of really interesting turns. The last major storyline really delved into Ilyana Rasputin magic and her history, being in limbo and being sort of shaped by limbo, and also her kind of taking that back a little bit and really kind of going back through everything. For this final arc, actually, a new writer came on for it, Charlie Jane Anders, who
I
is
do
actually going
have
to
a
be
question about that.
sure.
I got the first 13 issues of this, which
Hmm.
was basically Brisson and
Yeah,
Hickman were tag teaming. And then it was just Brisson, and I wasn't interested. Was
Vida
Ed Brisson?
Ayala.
So then Ayala was after Brisson? Okay.
Yes, yeah. She had actually taken it and had done it up to issue number 30, which was sort of the anniversary issue.
Okay.
Um, and then she was finished with the title and with New Mutants, and she had a really great really great letter to the fans within that book, talking about her time with the comic and with these characters. But for this final arc, it's almost like an introductory arc for the new team of New Mutants that's going to be in the new series that drops, I believe, in March, called New Mutants. Uh,
The New Mutants.
the New Mutants. It's basically it's some new group of mutants who are going to be uh taking the title of New Mutants, but Lethal Legion is what it's going to be called. Again, with Charlie Jane Anders on writing duties. I'm not sure if Alberto Albuquerque is going to be the art for that series, but he is the artist, the main artist for the last story arc, which is just 3 issues, starting with issue number 31 and ending with 33. So really quickly, it's a great, it's a pretty interesting introduction to some of these characters that we have new here. The big one being Shayla, also known as Expose. She's there in the right-hand corner of the cover if you're watching the live show. And her power is that she can switch places with anybody. And in switching places, she basically appears as that person. So can experience the powers if they're a mutant, or just basically walk in their shoes. She gives the example as if she were to switch places with the president, people would see her as if she had always been that person, as she had always been the president. So she's there as herself, but also not. She's the other person.
Sort of a doppelganger.
It's essentially, but she's really, actually
Right.
physically and spiritually switching places with that person. So that other person ends up where she was, wherever she
Gotcha.
had been,
Mhm.
confused and having no idea why they're there. But in this, they're captured. This group of New Mutants is captured by the U-Men, who kind of an interesting throwback there that they were brought back in here. But they
Is
are
this
a
the
group of
same U-Men from the 1940s?
no. This
They're not
is
the
this is
Nazi U-Men? Okay.
no.
From
This is from a more
Invaders?
recent arc. I think in like the late 2000s. I think they
Okay.
popped up a couple times. But basically, they're a paramilitary human group that seeks to evolve themselves by slicing off bits of mutants or harvesting their organs so that they can have
Oh,
powers.
okay. So
And
U-Men as in X-Men. Okay.
yes, like
That's
you,
compare okay,
man.
I get you.
They're also the reason why No Girl was a floating brain for so long. Basically, that's how she became a floating brain. They removed her brain and made her basically a floating ball. Well, she's actually now in a body again because she's been resurrected. And now that she's been recaptured, Sublime, the leader of the human, is trying to get her brain out again.
Mhm.
And Expose is pretty much the only one who can save the rest of the X-Men, the rest of the New Mutants who have been captured. And in doing so, she kind of confronts herself. She confronts a terrible prophecy that destiny has given her that she's going to lose her best friend in the course of this, this adventure. And she has to really fight against the fear of being responsible for bad things. She's always, done bad things, but she doesn't want to be responsible for hurting somebody. And so, because of that, she kind of, is stopped by that. It's something that's really a problem for her. But through this, it's very interesting, development of this character who we've never seen before, really, or really had any chance to spend time with. And I think that Andrews does a great job in writing this character. We do find out that this character is trans, so she's a trans woman, and we do that through some really interesting introductory. Like sub comics that appear on a few pages that are in the style of Charles Schultz's Peanuts, with her and her best friend drawn in that style and having like little conversations. I think it's an interesting, introduction to Anders as the New Mutants writer going forward, but also this team of characters, how they interact together, and how Expose interacts on the team. So, as a way of ending the New Mutants series, or at least this volume, I'm not sure it was very successful in doing that. Like it felt like we should just keep going on this and not end it and start something new. But Marvel likes doing that, so it's
Yeah.
probably more of an
Especially with
editorial
New
decision.
Mutants.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and actually the way that they did this,
Yeah.
I mean, why not just end it with 30 and then have issue 31 with the new story arc be a new volume of New Mutants? Like start it there, have this 3-issue story
Because
as the
number
first
ones
arc.
sell better than number 31s?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's what I was thinking. It's like
Yeah.
have issue number 1 be
Yeah.
issue 31, 2, and 3, and then this would be 3. But maybe they didn't want a 3-issue first arc. Maybe they wanted, something different. But I mean, it was good. If you haven't picked up any New Mutants, I think this was an interesting arc. If you if you haven't read any New Mutants, you pick up 33. I think you're going to be very confused.
Okay.
So
So I have a
start with
question.
issue number 31.
I have a question on this. So remember, I had questions about Brain Dome on the cover because I didn't know who it was. But now that it's No Girl, did they explain, or do we know where Martha is, or is there a conjunction between the two? Because wasn't
She is
Martha
Martha.
she is Martha? Okay, so I
She
was
is
always
Martha.
confused
Martha's the
about
brain.
whether No Girl and Martha were two separate entities, or whether they were like how their relationship worked as beings.
Yeah, basically, No Girl became her call sign, like her X-Men name, because there was no girl there, just a floating
Right.
brain. But she
Yeah.
was always Martha. Um, after she had her brain cut out, they basically just made her No Girl, and that's why I think there was a lot of tension with this because she didn't want to just be a brain again, and that's what Sublime wanted to do with her. So,
Gotcha. Okay.
yeah. So, I mean, there were some good stakes in this. There was some good writing. I think it was a good introduction to Anders and to these characters, but I'm kind of sad that it's like, okay, you get these 3 issues and then it's done, and now you have to wait a couple months and then it's a whole new series. So, all right. But yeah, I mean, New Mutants, if you haven't been picking it up, you know,
You haven't.
maybe go back a couple story arcs and see
Well,
if you like it. So,
Uh, and it's a good time to plug Marvel Unlimited. Not that Marvel needs a plug from us, but Marvel Unlimited is a great way to go back and read some of those issues that I think are either 3 or 6
mhm.
months back. If
Oh yeah,
if you want to, so go check it out. They've got everything literally.
absolutely.
So you don't have to search for it too hard. It is available for purchase, um,
Yeah.
fairly conveniently. So. Um,
all right, Caleb, why don't you tell us about a book that you have on your deck there that's Marvel as well?
I do. I not only have it on my deck, I have it on my desk. And Steve's going to show you a picture of it. And we're sticking with the House of Ideas over here. And I want to talk about Joe Fixit #1 for a few reasons. The first and foremost being that I really, really enjoyed it. The second being that I took Bill's the theme of this episode to heart, kind of a reintroduction to everybody. And if you don't know me, or this is your first time, like Cecil, it's his first time listening to the show. I'm a huge Hulk fan. I love the Hulk. If I had to, favorite character in Marvel, it's the Hulk. Second favorite's Bruce Banner. I really enjoyed this character, so I wanted to, welcome to us. This is who we are, and another reason is because this is being written by a Hulk icon. I don't know how else you put it. What he somebody who is so instrumental to this character that his thumbprint is on everything, and that's Peter David. And it is good to have Peter David back in mainstream comics. He did the Maestro miniseries for a while, but he just wasn't around for a little bit, and so to have him,
For a
I guess
little
not.
bit, but he's been working a lot. I mean, you also have to remember he was on the Scarlet Spider for some time.
That's true, and I didn't
Yeah,
read that, so I'm not
yeah,
familiar with that
yeah.
character. But
He's kept. I mean, I know. There have been points where
yeah,
he's not been in the monthly solicits,
right.
but he's had a foot in Marvel Comics more than not. I
Yeah,
think.
he never sunk into
Um,
obscurity, and, and
yeah,
and I'm not saying that he just like there were some things that he just he wasn't prominent on, and maybe it's just because he was writing characters that I'm not
right.
particularly interested in, which is
Yeah.
totally fair. Marvel puts out a bunch of books, but to have him back on the Hulk, anything tied to the Hulk is awesome. Go check out his Maestro. He did 3 Maestro miniseries. They're fantastic. But this, I say they're fantastic because I'm a mark, right? So take that for what you will. This is Joe Fixit. This is Hulk's gray persona that was a bodyguard, an enforcer for a pseudo in Vegas for somebody who owned hotels and casinos, kind of a mobster figure, but not necessarily a mobster figure. But this is a smart version of the Hulk, so he revisits this, and because we haven't gotten a lot filled in, we know who he was and what he was doing and who he was working for, but there's still some questions left unanswered. So I picked this up because I'm going to pick up everything, right? So it does take place when he was in Vegas. It is a modern time, though. So a lot of there's elements of the story that's told through like police body cameras and closed caption television. So he's moved it up into modern times. I thought that was an interesting element of it. But you get into it and you get the narrator saying, really, who is this person? Because no one really knew it was the Hulk, right? The Hulk is green. He's not smart. And here you have this gray clad giant figure Looks more like Tombstone than the Hulk. Sometimes in a suit, wearing a pinstripe suit, just beating people up, but also being intelligent. So he's kind of hiding in plain sight. And I'm really curious how that works. So then something interesting happened with this book on the second page. And I didn't know if I was going to like it. Peter Parker shows up. When I say I didn't know if I was going to like it, I don't like Peter Parker and Spider-Man outside of Manhattan. That is a character that I really do identify with New York. So it's kind of like taking Batman out of Gotham. It's real hard to make it work. Although, I liked Batman Europa. That was fun. Thanks, Jim Lee. So, so I was curious to see where they were going with this. Peter Parker is doing some work, right? So he's flew across the country. He's writing a book. He made a coffee table book of his pictures, and so he went to Vegas to kind of show it off. And his flight gets disconnected, but he's wading through the airport, and his spider sense starts tingling. And lo and behold, Wilson Fisk walks through the airport in Vegas, shocking him. And Wilson Fisk doesn't really know who he is. He moves him to the side, calls him boy. And Peter Parker's like, I'm not a boy. So good for him for standing up for himself, but he just kind of forgets that he's there. So Pete goes over and cancels his flight. It's going to cost him $100, but Pete just kind of waves it off. He'll fly with the punches. Why is Wilson Fisk in Vegas? What could be going on? Well, Fisk and Joe Fixit's boss, they have a common enemy, you might say. Michael Berengetti is the guy who owns the hotel, and he has recently, in terms of this story, had some issue with the Magia, the ninjas that are famous in Marvel, and so he is going to, he's dealt with them, and obviously Wilson Fisk, Hell's Kitchen, deals with them a lot, and so he's going to go in there and be like, hey, we have a common enemy. Wilson Fisk has reasons to care what goes on in Vegas. He's got some investments there. He's like, we need to force him out. And so that's why he's there. But really, he's going to take over Berengetti's little empire in Nevada, right? So he's making a move. Berengetti is not a dumb man. He don't play those games. And so he lets Fisk know real quick that he's already dealt with the Magia. He doesn't need Wilson Fisk in there. He doesn't want his help. And he just needs him to leave his office real quick. And Fisk responds as Fisk does. He breaks a desk. And that's about the time that Joe Fixit himself walks in and chests up to Wilson Fisk. I mean, these are two very large, imposing figures. Other than the grayness, look, some beefy dudes want to square off. I've seen that video once or twice. I'm about it. So let kind of seeing where it goes, and it goes exactly what you think. Wilson Fisk doesn't realize he is knuckling up to the Hulk, right? And the Hulk is not someone to be messed with. He doesn't suffer fools. He thrashes Wilson Fisk. About that time, Pete, Spider-Man, in a suit, comes out of the air vent and is just having the time of his life. He just watched Wilson Fisk get laid out. Where is this going to go from here? I don't know. This is I imagine it's going to be a 5 or 6 issue miniseries. Much in the vein of Maestro, we got 6 issues for each of those chapters. I'm having fun with this. It's interesting because it threw me off guard. I immediately got kind of my heart sank a little bit when I saw Spider-Man outside of Manhattan, because I was like, this isn't what's going on here. But hey, look, you're Spider-Man, who awesome. I love a good Spidey story. Spidey written by Peter David, great. Let's get more into this. But just showing him to be somebody who's watching what's happened and kind of being this fly on the wall who's next to this force who is Joe Fixit, and we're getting some more of that personality and his relationship with his boss and why he was in Vegas and what's Wilson Fisk going to do. There's an amazing scene on the last page. Look, Wilson Fisk got bloodied up. He got a bloody nose. One of his enforcers points it out and has a bad day at work. I'll leave it at that. But if you want really, really good storytelling, this is it. Shout out to Ildare Sonar, who does the art in this. It works wonderfully. I've seen his stuff before. Draws an amazing Spider-Man. Loved his Spider-Man. If I only had one complaint, he does that Deadpool thing where Spidey's eyes do different things to when he squints and stuff like that, the whites will get bigger and the margins of the black around the eyes do weird things. I don't personally like that, but it's an artistic choice, right? We'll just chalk it up to that. The art in this book is fantastic. His sensibilities and the panel layouts are incredibly fun. His storytelling is wonderful. He does some you could say heavy-handed with the inking on it, which, by the way, I should say, I don't know if he inks himself or if D. Cunniffe and Matt Milla is doing some of the inking, or they just did the colors. But really, really fun. And in a book full of pinstripe suits, the man had his work cut out for him. So shout out to that. So go grab it. House of Ideas, fun stuff. Peter David is awesome, and this book is going to be a lot of fun. So you get the Hulk.
Yeah, I do have to say, like, we've got a couple comments here. So Cecil does chime in here about Peter David's run on Supergirl,
Yes.
with Matrix, or May Clark, is her other character name. So I was reading Peter David on the Incredible Hulk, like back in like I guess the 400s, on the original run back in the early 90s, and I never liked how Mr. Fix-It was. Like how the Gray Hulk appeared. To me, he was always like the gross, weird Frankenstein Hulk.
Yeah.
And then Dale Keown came by with like sexy big green Hulk, and I don't know why, but I was like, yeah, that's the Hulk I can get into. I can get into that one, or vice versa. But anyway, yeah, that was kind of the era that I was reading it, and I never really connected with the Mr. Fix-It, but yeah, I mean, obviously as a character and as a development of Hulk, it's really important part of what makes modern Hulk so crazy and wild and everything, just all the different versions of him running around. The Gray Hulk was a big one.
Yeah.
It's what's cool about the character. There's different iterations of both his personality and his visage. So his personality shifts, and so does his physicality. And I think that's great in the character, because there is something fluidic or anthropomorphic, maybe is the word I'm looking for, that just changes about him, with both his attitude, his intelligence, and everything else. So, whether it's McFarlane or Ilda Sonar, it's good visages all around.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. And again, if people are not familiar with Peter David's run on Hulk I mean, it's so good.
So good.
I mean, if just for the notion of his addressing child abuse.
Yeah.
Oh my God. There were a few issues, and also with his old sidekick that died of AIDS. That's it. That's a
Rick. Was it Rick Wilson?
No, Jim something.
Jim.
Black Kid. Okay. Yeah. It's some really powerful stuff mixed in with some really funny stuff too. That's in the mix. I mean, the fight with Wolverine. I mean, there's a few moments that are like, I shouldn't be laughing at this, but it's funny. Yeah.
Whether you're talking about the whole like Return of the Monster in volume 2 of it, Peter David's X Factor run was amazing. I've got his Supergirl run. It's incredible. The man is just a powerhouse and has been for a couple decades now. So he's one of those people that just really does prove that, hey, like, we've got these guys who've been doing it forever that are still prescient, still doing great work, still timely, and really haven't swapped up at that much. They're just still good at what they do.
Yep. And if you want to look into our archives on Libsyn, there is a Peter David interview when he released a book about the Avengers. So,
and I'm not on it, and I'm mad about that.
Well,
it was a few years.
You were a twinkle in the eye of the podcast gods.
We did get to talk about the villains in that era of Peter David's Incredible Hulk, the Parthenon, I believe they're called.
They're called the Pantheon. All right, that's a little bit of an inside joke. Let's stop there. I'm gonna move on to my book, which is I'm holding here, but Steve also has it up. And this is a book I've been looking forward to so much since this book was announced, and it did not disappoint. This is Danger Street, which is the first issue, and there's going to be 12 issues, but I have a feeling they're going to announce the 13th. And why I think there's going to be a 13th is because the characters that are in this story were all characters that were spotlighted in a DC tryout series in 75 that went into 76 called First Issue Special. Now, when I was growing up, I heard these legendary stories of Showcase in the 60s. the characters, came out of Showcase. That was the tryout series where we got the Silver Age versions of the Flash and Green Lantern and the Atom, and new creations like Challengers of the Unknown and Metal Men. Lois Lane's solo series started out as a Showcase tryout. So this was a new version of Showcase, and there were 13 issues. Three of them are by Jack Kirby, written and drawn, and I can name the characters without even doing any reference here. Let's see if I can do it with the 13. And there are some characters that haven't really appeared in there. So that's Atlas, Green Team, Metamorpho, Lady Cop, Manhunter, Dingbats of Danger Street, the Creeper, Warlord, Outsiders, Doctor Fate, Starman, Codename Assassin, and Return of the New Gods. I named them all, 13 there. And yes, thank you. I'm old. Uh, but in the concept of Danger Street, these characters meet, and it is a black label, so you can play around with continuity and it not affect other things. But we do start with Doctor Fate's helmet, and it's on a diner table, and we need to know what's going on there, but we don't find out for a few pages. But it does involve some of the other characters. So Danger Street, where the Dingbats live, is on the beat of Lady Cop. Lady Cop is a very, very obvious takeoff of Policewoman from the 1970s, a series that starred Angie Dickinson. And I guess that's as close as they can come to the name without being sued. But Lady Cop in the original series has some really interesting origins. She was the sole survivor of a serial killer, which is kind of dark for the 70s, for a medium which was still perceived as a children's medium. And she becomes a cop because she wants to track the killer of her two roommates and friends. Really dark backstory, but and if the Lady Cop concept had grown into a series, there would have been some. Uh, I think there would have been some pretty potent storylines coming out of that. Just a side note: first issue special only generated two ongoing series out of it, which were the Warlord and the Return of the New Gods. So, not a great success rate. 2 out of 13. So. But we have these characters again. So as I said, Lady Cop is on the beat of Danger Street. The Dingbats, which are basically a street gang, have a vehicle, and they're not allowed to drive it on the streets. But she's really cool, and she escorts them over to the beach so that they can dune buggy there. Um, we also have Jack Ryder, who is the alter ego of the Creeper. And in the comics, Jack Ryder is basically I don't know what his status is right now, but just think of like um, a very right wing TV personality. Um,
A
Go
Ditko
ahead.
creation, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Ditko creation, but
Yeah.
like Hawk and the Dove, he kind
Right.
of split the scene pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so he's between jobs. He gets an offer to go to New York, which apparently is where Danger Street is fairly close to. And he auditions, and he doesn't think the audition goes well, but he's getting hired for the job, and they're moving really quick. He finds out who the owners are, and the owners are the Green Team, which is a group of teenagers. And the main entry point for the Green Team to become a member is that you have to become a millionaire, and they pay for the privilege of adventures, anything that doesn't keep them bored. So I guess a TV network in this political atmosphere is something that doesn't keep them bored. So back to Dr. Fate. Dr. Fate's helmet is on a diner table, and what we see is the Michael Thomas version of Starman with the Warlord, and they're in conversation about what they're about to do, and then they're joined by some steam, and the steam turns into Metamorpho, and what they're doing with Dr. Fate is somehow going to battle Darkseid, and the perception between Starman is and more Metamorpho is that it's either going to get them or get them back into the Justice League. So they're a bit mercenary in their motivations. And again, with Warlord, we're not exactly sure. Manhunter is there now. The Manhunter concept is tied into the Green Lantern Corps. They were the original version.
Hmm.
No Man escapes the Manhunters, and Mark Shaw is the Manhunter at this time, and he's engaged to go on a mission which involves killing some individuals. And the Grandmaster of the Manhunters, who seems much more sympathetic than he has been depicted in prior versions, tells him straight out this is going to involve the killing of children. And Mark is still dead set because he's a Manhunter, and they're going to move on that. Um, so the art is by Jorge Fornes, who was Tom King's partner in creating Rorschach, that miniseries, and it does share some of the same um, paranoia that goes along with um, stories about conspiracy theories, though it's not as deeply drenched naturally as Rorschach was. Uh, and in the middle of all this, I know I've provided some kind of dense and dark themes, but there's a sense of fun through this. It's almost like a Big Lebowski kind of surreal exploration of characters that are not A-list characters, but still have something to say and some value. We haven't really seen the Outsiders, which is not the Batman and the Outsiders. They're like a group of freaks, and the new gods really haven't come into the story yet, though they have been mentioned. So I'm really interested in where this goes, and it actually does involve the death of the apparent death, let's put it that way, of two characters at the end, which I could understand. Uh, will have some very complicated threads weaved into the story there because of those uh, particular deaths. Um, colors are by Dave Stewart. You
Hmm.
know, as far as I'm concerned, as a colorist, he's never batted less than 100.
Yeah.
Um,
No.
so I'm so looking forward to this series, and it so did not disappoint. And like I said, mark my word, there's going to be a 13th issue, just to keep with the conceit of the original series that this was based from.
I
So
so I
yeah,
loved this, and I wasn't
yeah,
familiar with a lot of the characters. Warlord, obviously, Creeper, I'm familiar with, but like the Lady Cop, I wasn't. The Dingbats, never read anything with them in there. This was so much fun, and I love what Tom King consistently does with these B and C list characters that he plays with. I mean, obviously he writes Supergirl too, but you look at some of the past stories that he's done. He takes these people who are out of the spotlight and just writes these amazing stories with
Yeah,
them. It is
they feel
so
like
good.
A-list characters in his hands.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, yeah,
He is consistently one of the really has mastered the art form of the 12 issue series. In my opinion, he does, and hopefully 13 for this one. But Steve, I sent you a message on Facebook Messenger with the image that that Jorge Fornes did in this book, and it's got the creeper in it. I would
Hmm.
commit sins and crimes to own this page. I don't know if you can share it or not, but it is just such a
I'm gonna
good.
try.
As far as the splash page goes, the mastery is just amazing. Just what he does is so great. Um,
Hmm.
it's fantastic.
Steve, did you get a chance to read this? Because I know this was part of your DCBS box.
I did. I did read this. I thought it was great. Again, and I think you might not like my impression of this, but in a good way. I think that this was like reading a comic version of an earlier era Tarantino movie, where you have all these
I
different
don't think that's
storylines.
unfair at all. Yeah, I don't think that's
Yeah,
unfair at all. There's no logical reason some of these characters should be intertwined
no,
in a
no. I mean,
storyline.
they're so
It's
disparate, and
it's
if you
pretty well weaved. Yeah.
exactly if you consider Danger Street as like the only thing that kind of nominally connects them, at least in this first issue, It's kind of hard to say like, oh, well, where's this going to go afterwards? Well, interestingly enough, like just the green team I thought was a really interesting inclusion. They did get a comic series several years ago. I think part of the New 52. I think maybe the
It was like
third
the second or third wave, New
generation.
52, but
Yeah,
written by Art and Franco.
yeah, that was an interesting take on the characters. Obviously trying to like make them cool and new, and um, but of course the other. Oh, hello, cat. Um, getting some visitors. Um, but I'm so intrigued. I want to know what happens next. I want to know how these all tie together. I want to know how they're all going to be. Where that point is in this caper where they all just sort of clash together all in the same place, same time.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that's going to be pretty interesting. Caleb, I'm trying to go ahead and see if I can share this.
Don't worry, don't worry about it if you
Yeah.
can. I mean,
Um, if I can also backtrack and not sound like gay dude who doesn't know sports, I said batting 100 for Dave
batting
Short,
1,000.
batting 400.
Batting 1,000. I
Well,
mean, it could
batting
be batting
400 is
100,
like
but
basically the unattainable hitting goal right
Yeah.
now.
um,
All right.
but yeah, let's see. Actually, I
I'll
might be
just,
able to pull this up.
I'll just watch on Sunday, and I don't care.
Yeah, he bowled. But he bowls 300.
Bulls 300, yes. So here's an image. It came out a little bit blurry, so I apologize for that.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
I
So
pulled it off
this
Google,
panel
so.
where the
That's
creeper
beautiful.
is descending upon this guy who's basically telling him like, I didn't mean to hurt anybody. Like it wasn't my
Yeah.
fault. I wasn't the one with the
Yeah.
gun. Like I didn't know that this was going to go down the way it is. And the creeper here is just pure vigilante. I don't care. I have vengeance
Yeah.
to mete out, and you're the one I caught.
Maybe it's
Um,
because Denny O'Neil added some more texture to the
Mhm.
question, but I think of the
Mhm.
surviving heroes, the Creeper is the most libertarian.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, because there isn't anything that motivates him other than just sort of purely like you are wrong and therefore you will be destroyed. There's no limit to the destruction because any type of guilt is basically, well, it needs to be eradicated. So
Yeah.
down it goes.
I also really like the Batman the Animated Series take on the Creeper, which is basically the Joker who had a few good days.
Yeah.
You know,
There we go.
I'd agree with you until Mr. A makes a comeback. He's definitely the most libertarian, or until they get an old version, a different version of Hawk. If they go back to that original inception of it, but good reason to pitch Zach Crucy's book. So if you haven't read,
Yeah.
Google Zach Crucy. Journey into Mystery was his book, and it's fantastic take on Ditko. So go read that.
Okay, well, I'm going to
Absolutely.
keep on keeping on with DC, or since we said the House of Ideas, let's say the Distinguished Competition.
There you go.
And there we go with Nightwing Nightwing 2022 Annual. So this
Mhm.
came out in November. Should still be on your newsstands, your comic shop shelves. There we go.
At the 5 and dime.
I miss newsstands. I really do.
I do too, actually.
I miss being able to buy comics on newsstands, I have to say, in my day. But here we go. Nightwing 2022 Annual. Dick Grayson is one of my favorite characters. I love from the glimpses that we've had from the end of Dark Crisis on Infinite Earths that Dick Grayson is positioned to be a very major player in whatever happens in Dawn of DC and onward. And the series, the ongoing series of Nightwing, written by Tom Taylor, is fantastic. It's one of DC's best books right now. It's one of the best books by any publisher. And the annual was a great primer. If you haven't been in touch with Nightwing, this is a great mechanism to get you back in touch. It contains 3 stories. They're all very different, 3 different writers. And the first is by the monthly titles uh, writer Tom Taylor with art. And I have to say this because he did 2 of the 3 stories in here, and I'm not really familiar with this guy's work, but I really enjoyed it. And maybe you guys can tell me, Eduardo Pansica. Are you familiar with his work at all? I didn't really do any research into that.
No,
That
not
name
I,
is familiar.
yeah.
Yeah. So
Hmm.
starts with the lead up story, and you'll see on the cover there, there's Heartless, which is a villain in the Bloodhaven world that Nightwing inhabits, and they've set him up to be a major villain with the death of Blockbuster, who was basically the big bad through most of the Taylor run so far. He's off the grid, needless to say, and Heartless is there, and the origin of Heartless is presented here, and it's an amazing parallel story to Alfred Pennyworth and Dick Grayson. Uh, think
Mhm.
the evil version of Alfred and Dick, um, and you get a lot of the motivation behind Heartless, a truly awful rich kid, and with some of the situations that his upbringing provided, has gone down a particular path that makes and we don't even really know what. I don't think they even addressed what the dude's real name was, because he kind of faked his entrance into Heartless's world as the butler by means of impersonation and killing the person that actually was slated to go over to America from London to work for the rich couple that were the parents of what was the kid's name? Uh, Shelton. Even a rich kid named Shelton. Uh, so it fills in some gaps in the Heartless storyline that were provided in Taylor's run, and a really interesting, really dark story. But I had a much deeper appreciation behind his motivations. There were a lot of question marks in the Taylor run about why this character is here and why this character is so important. Now we know. Uh, the second story, and this was my favorite story, featured Bitewing. Now, Bitewing is the three-legged homeless dog that Dick Grayson uh, took into his home, and we have a story here that you're not exactly sure how it's moving because there's some cuts. There's some basically I'm sorry, I'll cut that out in the edit. I'm a little tongue tied right now. There are some deviations from reality, and it turns out, and I'm sorry if this is a spoiler for people, but it's Bitewing's dream of what Bitewing becoming a hero would be like, and
That's cute.
it's really wonderful because the Catwoman that's in there is not the Catwoman we know, but it might be in terms of what Batwing knows, what Bitewing knows. But then the third story, and this is the one I don't know if you read this, Caleb, but the lesson, which is written by C.S. Pacat with art by Inaki Miranda, and this stars Jonathan Kent with
Okay.
Nightwing. When Clark went off world, he entrusted Dick Grayson to help look after John Kent and, when necessary, mentor him. And it's really lovely to see that that relationship is going to continue.
Very
And
cool.
what happens is John, through a mistake that he made, wants to learn how to non lethally fight. And when you have the powers of Superman, that's both easy and not easy. Let's put it that way. And we see the parallels between how Dick was trained and how Dick is applying that training to John. Batman came from a very different place from Dick. Dick is bright and positive, and you can never ascribe those particular descriptions to Bruce. And wonderful parallel storyline, storytelling. Absolutely loved it, Caleb. If you have not gotten it, you need it just for this issue, for that last story.
So I haven't picked it up, and this is going to be a shame on me moment. I'm not reading Taylor's Nightwing mainly because I missed the boat at first, and so I need to go back and pick up the trades and just catch up with it because it has won multiple awards. It is fun. Everybody, you
Yeah,
laud it copiously. Everybody talks about how amazing this is. So
yeah,
because I'm not on the main series, I didn't pick up the annual, but I do enjoy annuals, especially when they're done well. So I will go back and grab this, and I'm gonna make a point to read all of Taylor's Nightwing because I read most of what Taylor puts
yeah.
out.
And
And
also with Taylor's Nightwing, if you like the concept of Dick with Barbara, that's your place.
I do like the concept of
Oh,
Dick.
then you will love it. You will love it.
I mean, we all love Dick here, so I
New
think
York
this sounds
comic,
like a
Jesus
good
Christ.
Yeah.
option for all of us to read.
So, Bill, just for the edification of our listeners, Eduardo Pansica, I recognize the name and I wasn't sure why. He's a kind of familiar artist when it comes to DC. I don't know if he's an exclusive to DC, but most notably, he did one of the most recent Suicide Squad runs during the Infinite Frontier. He did the covers and the pencils of that. He also worked on Batwing. He did Earth Two, World's
That must have
End.
been Tom Taylor's run. Yeah, that must have been
Yeah,
Tom Taylor's run. That makes perfect
yeah,
sense.
All
and
right. Okay.
did some Green Lantern work as well. He's done a lot, but those are probably his most notable all DC stuff.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
Brazilian artist, I should say. So that's
Yeah.
that's
Oh, that's
Well,
fantastic.
he
good.
does really good work in here. Really good work on this
Yeah, I
story.
mean, now that you mentioned like the Earth 2 run
And
and
that's his cover. And
Green Lantern, like
that's
yeah,
also his cover.
Yeah,
there you go. Cool.
So, and again, if you've been away from Nightwing for a while, you know,
good good time to jump back in.
good reentry point. Yeah, and if effectively three done in one stories, um, don't have to dive into what the current situation is. You can just use this little taster and then see if you want to go for the main meal.
Oh,
That's
I
cool.
All
want it.
right,
Talking to
all
me
right,
here.
all right, Caleb. I'm throwing it back to you. Tell us about something you're reading that you're enjoying this time from the independent world.
Yeah, I was gonna say we've talked about Marvel and DC for most of the books here, but jump over to a different publisher, not somebody who's outside of the realm of some of the larger ones, but this comes from Dark Horse, and really cool because if you pick this up off the shelf, it's a different kind of thing, but it has that cover inside it. This is a book from Dark Horse Comics. It's called Spy Superb, and it comes from the very capable. Very talented hands of Matt and Charlene Kent. I don't know if you can see, I've got all of my management on the shelf behind me. I'm a huge Matt Kent fan. Super Spy is one of my quote unquote bathroom books. I keep it in my guest bathroom for anybody who wants to just flip through some cool stuff while they're digging through stuff. Matt Kent, I adore his work, and I am ecstatic that he is returning to spy stories. It is one of the things that he does best, and he loves this genre. He's very very good at it, and just super talented when it comes to laying out these things and funny. Just really pulls the gags and makes everything intriguing and interesting and fun. So in this story, we start off with kind of the death of the feature character, which is weird, right? Like, wait, you're telling me the spy superb is dead? Yeah, there's a body in a trunk, and it is freaked out the handler because what's going on? This is their super spy, except not really, right? Turns out Spy Superb is a program. It is an interagency program that was started just after World War II between the Americans and the French. And they originally did have an actual Spy Superb. He was the great guy, except he put a bomb on his belt and blew himself up, which is not necessarily what you want out of your spy. But what they realized real quick is that they could actually make a legend. So this is almost like Baba Yaga, right? Like this is the boogeyman. They have throughout time and history, they have used manipulation and patsies, for lack of a better term. They just they look at ordinary average schmoes and they say, hey, we can just put things around you and motivate you in certain ways and get you to do things like oh, you found the cell phone on the side of the road. I'm going to pick this up and I'll go turn it in over here, and then the spies can get it. So that's the spy superb method, right? So they just kind of manipulate average ordinary citizens to do things. Um, that are spy things, and in doing so, they avoid our enemies. So in this book, they specifically list like the Chinese and the Russians and stuff, and so they're able to avoid their own espionage agents. They can't ever get a peg on them. They can't key into them because they never know where they're going to be. Except, like I said, you got a body in a trunk. Oh no. Why is that a big deal? Because this person was supposed to go through and deliver a cell phone that has all of the next quote unquote spy superbs. Like they had mapped out a plan. And if the enemy gets their hands on that, then the whole thing is kaput. Also, if they never make the drop, they realize that they killed the spy supreme. So we have two situations to where it's going to just be bad. And so the handler, says, what do we do? Well, hang on, we have a plan, guys. We have got the most useful idiot ever. This guy, I love this story. So background, I've got my JD, right, but my undergrad is in creative writing. I hang out with a lot of writers. I'm into comics, know a lot of writers. I'm into books, know a lot of writers. There are some people that are really good at what they do. There are some people that think they're really good at what they do, and they are wrong. This person is the latter, right? Kind of a middle-aged, slumpy white dude with a weird porn stash, who always wants to tell you about his epic novel that he's writing, and he's almost done with the first chapter. And people would be an idiot if they didn't pick it up. It's the next great thing. It's so in depth. I mean, it's better than Proust. He's never read Proust, but he's heard about him, and that's the same thing, right? Like we're talking about this guy, and if you're in writing circles, you've met this guy, right? He usually hangs out at Starbucks, doesn't pay. That person. And so, yeah, he's meeting his buddy at a coffee shop, trying to convince him that of his own greatness. And by the way, the fact that he's meeting his buddy at this coffee shop is benevolence in and of itself. This is a busy man. He's the next great writer, right? He's taking out of time, precious time, out of his day for the story that just flows out of him, although he hasn't finished the first chapter yet, to do this. So, grace be upon him for doing this. Lo and behold, he's also having phone problems because he watches weird porn, right? And so part of this phone problem, though, is it is a virus that's been planted by the handlers. Long story short, our boy here, who by his name, he has the best useful idiot name ever. It is J. Bartholomew III. And so he carries around a book of famous quotations. He has a vintage sci-fi novel in his satchel, a journal for capturing ideas and bits of realistic dialogue, and a multi-purpose tool. Yeah, that guy. So he goes and gets his phone checked out. This is manipulation, as we've seen before. These are the spies doing what they do. They are turning him into the next spy superb. But somebody else catches on to this too, and our boy rolls into his apartment, and there are three, classic quintessential thugs, guys that are ready to just off him or whatever. But our useful idiot is convinced that they're the maintenance men. And he proceeds to parade them around his apartment as they're confused as to why he's not trembling in fear, and shows them how his everything is messed up. His gas stove doesn't work. And then he lights one on fire, and he goes to put out the fire, dings the dude with the fire extinguisher. It is a comedy of errors. I never knew that they could do this. Like a 3-page comedy of errors gag is hilarious in the hands of Matt Kent, right? Like this is the most, like, who ties this man's shoes, but he just avoids 3 trained assassins, and just ends them. And this just confused about why they died in his apartment. So what's going to happen with this? We don't really know. We're going to see in the next issues. Not sure if this is a 4-issue series, if this is a 6-issue series, where this is going. It all does revolve around a woman, though, who met him at the phone repair shop that mixed up stuff. I'm curious to see where she comes in. If you've read Matt Kent's work before, this is very, like, he deals in layers. He writes in a really, really, really great, intriguing mystery, spy story, detective story, whatever you want to label it as. I am all in. I want to see where this goes. It's a mix of history, mix of modern. It's fantastical, but it's also laced in the reality. Also, something interesting, and this goes to the genius of Matt Kent. This agency that the spies use. It goes by a particular name and the name is part French, but the word is four in French, and you start seeing the number four show up all through this book. And so I want to know what number that had. Like there are four spies that are being trained, and only one of them gets to be the handler. There's a story about an assassination that involves five ingredients. Four of them the person's allergic to. Um, it's just fascinating. I want to see where he goes with it. It's a very smartly written story, um, uh, colored wonderfully. It's got a very flat matte coloring that just really plays in well. Um, so I'm going for the ride, guys. Like this is so good. It is everything I want in a Matt Kent comic, and I just need a lot more of it.
So I read this too. I loved it. The four thing I didn't really pick up on it, but I did pick up on the making fun of French. The
Yeah.
agency is half wheat, which is half of wheat being the number 8, but half wit also
Yes. Yep.
is the pun there. But it also is 4 because half of 8 is 4.
Right. That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah. So just real quick, this is in reference to Nightwing. Tony Gilkinson, who's joined us, has chimed in. We need an ass off featuring Cat versus Nightwing, and I think that was in response to something that that Caleb posted in our chat just a little while ago. About while Cap is great, it's really Dick that has America's ass. I would agree with that too. And we've seen it many times in the comics. One last thing about this, there is a sort of a short story that's in the back that details the history of the head of this agency, or at least the American head of the agency. And he tells a story of how he killed, his mark by basically feeding him every possible allergen trigger. And if you notice on the back of this Trader Joe's bag, that's the cover. It is a receipt for bananas, peanut butter, shellfish, cashews, and strawberries. So there you go. There's also probably some codes in here as well that mean something.
Sure.
If you're a big Matt King
Yep.
fan, he does love putting codes into things and having other little mysteries and things to make fun of.
Okay, Steve, you have one more book to talk about. I'm unfortunately going to have to ask you to abbreviate it because we are almost directly at the 2-hour mark. So why
No
don't you tell us about
problem.
that?
So I'll be pretty quick here. And I picked up, because I've been reading a lot of Opus books. Opus puts out a lot of stuff that's inspired by or, written by or an homage to a lot of different metal bands. And one of the latest ones here, and this isn't so much an homage, but it is actually inspired by and story by a band called the Black Veil Brides, which are kind of like a glam metal, very hot topic kind of band. I have listened to some of their stuff. It's fun. You've probably heard something very similar to there before, but this is in reference to the Phantom Tomorrow. The first issue just dropped the other week. This is in reference to the album The Phantom Tomorrow, which came out in, I believe, 2021. And that's their rock opera concept album. And so this comic is directly tied to the album itself and the concepts and songs that they had in that album. So long story short, plot on this one, you have a character who is attempting to find the way to extend life indefinitely, to live forever. He's working for a very shady gentleman who wants him basically to use his ex-wife as the test subject. Unfortunately, the scientist has been sleeping with this ex-wife, and of course, the shady gentleman knows it. Goes to demonstrate the machine, kidnaps the ex-wife, and kills the scientist, who then descends into the Field of Bones, which is sort of like a limbo hell kind of scape, and tries to escape from that. And in doing so, is able to at least free his soul from that torment, and then, is back in reality to exact his revenge in the rest of the series. Now, if that sounds familiar, there's also a very, a black bird that is involved in this, that is a companion to this person who's raised from the dead to seek revenge and to rescue his lost love. And if that does sound very familiar, it is essentially an homage, fully inspired by James O'Barr's The Crow. And it's very Crow-like. A lot of the imagery, a lot of the the artwork kind of inspires sort of memories of The Crow. It's not an exact ripoff. There's a couple other things in there. However, the gentleman that we see outlined on the cover, that is the character Blackbird. So very much like that. But interestingly enough, for me, and I know Caleb, for you as well, one of my favorite soundtracks, one of my favorite albums as a kid, or at least in high school for me, was the Crow soundtrack.
You're gonna leave me out of that conversation?
Yeah, and same thing with Bill too. I know we've
Right.
talked about it before on this.
Jesus
The thing that
Christ.
I find interesting here, though, is that this is kind of the reverse. This is the album. The album came first, and then here's the piece of visual media that goes along with it. So apparently you can listen to the soundtrack along with it, and it sort of follows a lot of the same beats that were in the concept album. But the story is by Andy Biersack, who is the lead singer for the band, but it's fully written by Michael Morrissey, with art by Augusta Padilla, and actually pretty satisfying colors from Charlie Kershaw. So I really enjoyed it. I'll read the rest of it. I'm less happy about the price point, not because it's satanic. It is $6.66, which is kind of pricey for a book, but that's what Opus has been kind of going out with recently. And you know what? It's worth it. It's high quality cardstock. These are longer books, and good quality. But
Okay.
Since you're mentioning that it's an homage book, I will say that the silhouette of the character is an homage of Solomon Kane. For those of you who are listening,
Big time, yeah.
Yep. So you're getting a lot of that inspiration. Now, I mean, it's up to you to think if this is just a pure old ripoff of The Crow. I mean, they're very obvious in a lot of what they're, what's inspiring them for this, what the inspiration is in imagery, as well as the storyline itself. But I'm really interested to see where they go with this. And I mean, it's neat. It's neat. I don't know. You might have a different opinion on it.
I have to say, Michael Morrissey wrote the absolute best tie-in series from Dark Horse to Stranger Things.
Yeah.
He wrote a really good Stranger Things miniseries, and I'm not going to forgive you for just forgetting about me.
He also.
I mean, I saw Machines of Loving Grace live, bitch. I mean, come on.
I know.
Oh, you're
Bill.
in
Anything that has to do with music. The
You're in
answer
the
for you is always
shitter
like
for
like that's
Oh my
like I don't even have to mention it.
Yeah. What
but
did you think I was listening to? Slippery When Wet or something? Jesus Christ.
Well, I'm sure you were also listening to that too. You've listened to everything.
Fuck no. Fuck no.
Michael
Morrissey.
Do
you have a copy of the album behind you?
Yeah, it's over here somewhere.
Yeah, okay, there we go.
Most of the soundtracks are over here.
Yeah.
Soundtracks and various artists are over here.
Michael Morrissey also wrote a book called The Plot, which was my favorite horror story of about 3 years ago. That was just it's awesome. I absolutely adore that book. So
what was the publisher for that?
It was, let me look that up. That is a good question. Vault Comics.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Vault did that one. Yeah.
And Vault's had a lot of books of that nature.
Vault, the year that came out, for like a year after that, Vault was my favorite small press publisher. As we do like our end of the year favorite things. So
okay.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
All right, we're gonna start wrapping this episode up, and our first segment, when we start wrapping stuff up, this moved in the timeline here, is something we call Geek-Gets. We don't just get comics, we get all sorts of ephemera, very often comic connected, but we buy stuff. So this is a segment where it's sort of show and tell, where we display something that we recently got. So Steve, I know you often beg off of this segment. You got nothing?
I got nothing because it's going to be my woof.
Okay. Over to Caleb. Caleb, do you have anything for your Geek-Get?
I do, yeah. So you can't see it. I'll show you sometime, but I have a couple of these around here. But Diamond Select puts out these really cool figures. They're PVC. They're not resin, so they're affordable. Most of them are just $40. I get a lot of the Avengers one because that's, as far as team books go, Avengers is my jam. So I got this really cool Diamond Select cap. Look, America's ass right there.
Yeah.
I'll show you sometime. I've almost got all of the OG Avengers. I just need Ant-Man. I've got the Hulk over here, just off screen. But I've got Wasp, I've got Thor, I've got Iron Man. I need Ant-Man, and I'll have the OG Avengers. I don't think they've actually put out an Ant-Man one yet. But again, Diamond Select figures, really affordable, really cool. If you want more than pops, but you don't want to spend the money on a slideshow or sideshow, they're great. They're very, very well done. So
And they all have stands. They all come with
they
stands.
do. They all come with these little guys. They work out wonderfully.
Nice.
So
Okay, I got my first toy of 2023. I actually got it from a supermarket that had their uh, Christmas items on sale. And I'm DC over Marvel. I'm not much of a Lego guy, but I could not resist Wolverine mech armor. I cannot wait to
there you
put this
go.
together. Uh, just everything about this is cool. The little Wolverine figure that's going to inhabit this Transformers esque conception here. Just really thought this was cool. This is one of the disadvantages of listening to the audio episodes, and I think there have been times where we've uh, kind of haven't picked up the ball and stuff in properly describing something. But basically, it's a Lego Transformer with Wolverine, who is operating a Lego Transformer of Wolverine. It's pretty cool. Okay. And now we're moving on to our final segment, which is the woofs of the week. In the bear community, if you find a fella attractive, you woof at him. And we do something similar. We woof at something which may be a comic book, but it may also be a TV program or a film or a charitable initiative, anything under the sun that we think you, fair listener, or potentially viewer, may be interested in sampling. I'll start as I always do with Steve. Steve, what is your woof of the week?
So my woof of the week, which would be my Geek-Get if I had something else, but this is something that I was really excited to kickstart last year when it was offered. I've been reading this gentleman's work on Instagram for a long time. It's been such a great comic strip, webcomic to read, and I was so excited that he was going to be able to publish it with the help of this Kickstarter. And that is Jean-Frédéric Kun's Santa Francis. This is a great web series. We've talked about it before, I think a few years ago when it first started. But it's the adventures of several gentlemen, but the main person to start is a man named Cobb, who moves to the big city for the first time and is confronted with just a plethora of really hot dudes. And it's very much, I wish I could open this up for you, but unfortunately for Facebook guidelines, I cannot, because this is fully uncensored. So if you did get the Kickstarter, or if you do want a copy of it, it is fully uncensored. On Instagram, you can actually read it without being terribly embarrassed in public. But it's a beautiful book, wonderful story. Again, reprinting the webcomic to the volume 1. But this one also came with, and I can show this poster because there is no nudity on this side.
On this side.
On this side. Well, there isn't on the other side either, but came with a beautiful poster of Santa Francis, sort of reprinting the cover. And then on the back, it's several of the gentlemen. Lee over here, in this corner, and then Cobb, Haas, and Martine, who are the 4 main gentlemen here, with a very interesting look. And then it also, because I went through some of the extras, also comes with a couple magnets, which I can actually display on my refrigerator without having to hide them when my parents come and visit. And then several bookmarks, which I will sort of show from a distance, because if you look too closely, there's some stuff you can't show on Facebook. But it is just such a wonderful thing, and this is just a beautiful book. Beautiful production of the book, and it's such a great story. I really love watching, reading through it, with or without the censored imagery. If you get it uncensored, though, it's very pretty. So, Santa Francis by Jean-Frédéric Connet.
All
Wonderful,
right.
wonderful stuff.
Over to Caleb. Caleb, what is your wolf of the week?
I'll start my wolf of the week off with a quiz, Bill. Bill, if you had to say, who would you say was one of my favorite bands?
Guns N' Roses.
Well, who would you say is one of my favorite bands?
Judas Priest.
Judas Priest. That's right. Yeah. So again, I'm you were right on both accounts, though. Those are like that is my two favorite bands.
I'm sorry, I wasn't that quick on the uptake there.
No, you're good. Again, keeping with the theme of introductions, I'm a metalhead. I love metal, and Judas Priest. I love them for a number of reasons, not the least of which is because they are the metal gods, but also because Rob Halford's a very important figure, a pop culture figure in my life. I asked Steve at the beginning of the episode when the first time he saw himself in comics was. Rob Halford's one of the first time I saw myself in music, found representation in music. He's a gay metalhead, and that's me. So huge fan. I've got a whole little shrine up to him up here. But he also has 2 books out, one of which I've spoken before on the show. I also picked up a recent copy of Rob Halford Biblical. Now, his other book, which is Rob Halford Confessed, he writes a story about his life, right? So it's his anecdotes about himself. This is actually more of a story that gets to behind the scenes of, what happened? What is the mechanics of a band? What does a tour guide do? Or what does a manager do? What does a music lawyer do? What are these, like, the machinations of the industry? And he writes about all of this in Biblical, and he does a really cool job. Like he ties it into the reference to the biblical references, and because he's a metal god, so really great insight behind the scenes stuff. Truth be told, it's not as juicy as his last book because it's not as personal, right? Like it's stories, anecdotes about the band and being on the road. But to make it even better, I picked up this at Barnes and Noble, and I lifted the front book to see a little sticker on the book underneath it, and it had this little signed edition sticker on it. So, guys, I have Rob Halford's signature in my book. That's pretty cool. I'm happy about that. And look, I choose to believe it's Rob Halford's signature. Who knows if it really is, but that's the closest I'll ever get to him, unless my New Year's resolution comes true and I get to be his bestie, which I really want. I want to be Rob Halford's bestie because essentially, if you don't know me, I'm the love child of Rob Halford and Dolly Parton, as we've established before. So, that's my wolf of the week. Go pick it up. It's a really fun read. Biblical by Rob Halford.
Yeah, I do have to say,
Cool.
Caleb, the only reason that I didn't pick up the autograph version is I already have a Fight CD, which is autographed by Rob and the other members of the band. So that's the only reason I didn't pull the trigger on getting an autograph. I did get an autograph recently of someone I've always wanted. So I just want to show off my Elvis Costello
Nice.
on the Rusty album. But enough of that, because I'm going to stay on the metal track. And Steve, you're going to have to pull up the graphic on this because I don't yet have my physical copy, but I certainly want to talk about this. And this is Classic 78, their album Phantoms. Now, there's a reason this looks like a Kiss album because for all intents and purposes, this is a Kiss album. The Classic 78 was formed by, oh God, I just had it here and it just sped by. Joe McGinnis and Tom Higgins, who are part of the road crew for Aerosmith, and they've always been huge Kiss fans. And at some point, Tom started writing songs, and he found the songs he wrote sounded like Kiss 70s songs. So they formed this group. They don't play live. It's basically just a studio concern. They released 2 online EPs, and then they put out this album. The physical version of this is only available through Newberry Comics. So if you want to get this, you have to get this only through Newberry or pay like stupid prices on Amazon. And there's no reason to do that because you can buy it for $10 over at Newberry Comics. So I'm awaiting my physical copies because me. And it really, if you're familiar with the history of Kiss, in late 1978, each member of the group released solo albums, and they basically suck. They all have their fans, but they're Aces is okay and Pulse is okay, but the other two are really bad. And this album is like if the solo albums didn't happen and they put out a really good Kiss album at that time, and that's where the name of the group comes from. And Phantoms is also an allusion to the Kiss meets the Phantom of the Park, which was their TV movie, which was equally as bad compared to the solo albums.
Yeah.
78 was a weird year
Yeah.
for Kiss, a weird year, but in my world where I am pariah and I'm able to reformat the multiverse, this was the album that Kiss put out in 1978. The drummer on this, merely because he was such a fan of their original recordings, is Charlie Benanti from Anthrax, who is also
Mhm.
now drumming for Pantera.
Yep.
So
Mm.
between the two picks that Caleb and I had, and then Steve, your book, there's a bit of a metal edge to this particular episode. And they received praise from no greater an authority than Paul Stanley, where he commented, "This stuff is great, and please let them know I said that." So,
Oh,
Yeah.
and
that's.
also,
I
it's
mean,
like
that's praise.
also if you're a fan of Charlie Benanti, does these Peter Criss roles that sound exactly like Peter Criss with the jazz influence, and it's something you don't hear in Anthrax, and it proves what a huge fan he is, and just how cool this the entire formation of this project was. So, classic 78 by Phantoms, and if you want a physical copy, you can get it through Newberry Comics, and if you want to download it, it's available through Apple and all the other resources. So that's my wolf of the week, and hopefully before the week is out, I will have the physical version in my hands because I have been playing this nonstop.
Just to round that out, people are wondering. You said Pantera is playing. Zach Wilde is playing with them too. So we have Vinnie Paul and Dimebag being replaced by Zach Wilde, and as you just said, the former drummer of Anthrax, or the drummer of Anthrax. So,
Yep.
but also conceptual continuity. Speaking of heroes that disappoint you, Pantera.
Oh.
White supremacy before there was a lot of white supremacy. Yeah.
Cringe.
Uh,
Is he
Oh.
still at it, or have they shut Phil up on that stuff?
he's calmed down some. He's calmed down. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Mm.
it is what it is.
Mhm.
Cemetery Gates is sometime we need to talk about what our favorite Kiss songs are, though. I want to have that conversation with you.
That would be tough
Yeah.
because there's well, my favorite Kiss album is the one that's like universally derided, which is Music from the Elder. And if you go into
Yeah.
our feed, there's an entire episode about Music from the Elder, which is
I listened
almost
to
like,
that. It was really like the
oh,
episode.
we
I
had
thought that
so
was
much
great because I
fun.
wasn't part of it.
And Kurt had to leave because he had to drop off his boyfriend at the airport, but the rest of us just kept talking Kiss for like 3 hours afterwards.
Yeah.
It was just
Yeah.
wonderful. Yeah.
I
You
happen to
get
be
Kiss fans talking, they can just keep talking and talking and talking, and they have as much hate and derision for the band as they have love often. It's a very weird dynamic. It's a very
Bill.
strange dynamic.
I don't know if you and I have had this conversation, but I have the privilege of being very good friends with Brian Stewart, who was their longtime photographer and put out Kiss Magazine. He was the editor of Kiss Magazine.
Oh,
So
nice.
we should absolutely get a hold of him sometime and talk to him on
Oh,
the show,
that would
and
be
we could
cool.
have that conversation. He is has a great Bernie Wrightson art collection, huge comic fan. Great man. I love him to death. So I'll see if I can't pull that and get him on the
Oh,
show.
that'd be nice. That'd be nice.
Oh,
And
that'd be cool.
and Kiss certainly have an alignment with comics. I mean, like right
Oh,
here, I have
100%.
the compendium like right underneath here,
Yeah.
which was a beautiful collection. And the closest I've come to Kiss is I did meet Eric Carr in a record store one time. That was the
Nice.
close, and he was
Br-
up there with Neil Finn as among the nicest rock stars I've ever met. Um, so and he died too young at 41.
Yeah.
So let's not end on that note. Let's end on the note that we got through this episode. It was a bit long, but that's okay. We haven't been together in a while. We reintroduced each other, and in terms of getting the show back on track, I think we're on a good. I think we have a pretty good pace for that. So, thank you,
Cool.
gentlemen. I really
No,
enjoyed
thank
tonight.
you. Thank you,
Really,
Bill.
really enjoyed tonight. All right.
What's
Again,
going
we are the Comic Book Bears podcast. You can find us on the Twitter and the Tumblr and the Instagram as Comic Book Bears. We do plan to become a lot more active in this arena, so stay tuned. Even if it's just likes, it's more than we're doing right now, but we will do what we can to expand our profiles all along social media. And on that note, if you're looking for us on Facebook, we are Comic Book Bears Podcast. If you want to write to us, please do so by sending an email to comicbookbears@gmail.com. If you want to listen to us, you can do it through downloading on Apple Podcasts, through Stitcher Radio, and many of the other podcatching platforms. And if you are watching us through our YouTube channel, thank you. And you can hit like if you did, in fact, do that, and subscribe. And if you joined us for Facebook Live, thank you for joining us tonight live. Until next time, I'm Bill Zanowitz.
I'm Steve Morey.
And I'm Caleb Alexander McKenzie.
And in another reality, I'm the Grand Pooh Bear.
I'm Cuddles.
Alphabet mobster.
You can hear a whooping and explosion. We'll be back real soon. Take care, everyone.